This is TWiT.
So what about this rumor that Apple might be planning this comes from Cheddar, an unusual source for Apple scoops. Cheddar is I think a television network, right?
It's a streaming network. Financial network.
Apple's planning a subscription service for games, Cheddar says, according to 5 people familiar with the matter. They apparently started approaching developers last year discussing a subscription service. Megan and I talked about this on iOS Today. We were puzzled because well, there are subscription services for gaming. Microsoft's Game Pass, for instance, $100 a year, and you get unlimited access to a large number of titles, including some A-list titles. And so it's about the cost about 1.5 games a year. But games on iOS, is it on iOS? Games on iOS, $5, $10? What could they charge for a subscription service that would make sense?
Leo. It's turning off the IAPs. That's a big deal for that stuff. You get the full version of the game. They don't microcharge you. They don't charge you for upgrades, for extra levels. You actually get to play. And some of these games have been so destroyed by microtransactions. Not looking at Electronic Arts so closely, but damn Electronic Arts, you've ruined a lot of games. And they're just not fun anymore. They're horrible, horrible experiences that people get addicted to but don't really enjoy. And if you could give, and this is a terrible example, but if you could say, hey, this is the Nintendo Club on Apple TV. You pay $100 a year and you buy the Nintendo MFI controller and you have access to everything up to the N64 games, or you have a bunch of Apple developer games and you have access to all of these things, and there's no IAPs, there's no upgrade purchases, there's no extra level packs. You just get full access to these games. That might be compelling for people who surprisingly really love games.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about this in the larger ecosystem of, oh no, now they're going to be competing with like NVIDIA's streaming platform, and they're going to be competing with Google's Project Stream, which will put full board PC titles in any Chrome browser. That's a bad and maybe a weird idea. But when you think about the iOS game ecosystem as its own self-contained market, as its own individual platform, and when you think about how worried every single parent is about their kid somehow getting access to their fingerprint or their passcode and racking up enormous amounts of charges for these pay-to-play games, the idea of saying, well, what if we just pay $10 a month and we will let the kid download any app that works with the subscription model, they can play forever, and it will only cost us $10 a month. That's a really compelling thing to tell parents, especially considering
really
never
$10 a month. No,
it will never bother us again.
No,
Leo.
You don't have kids. I would that's ridiculous. Maybe $1 a month. $10 a month.
You bought your kid an $800 phone. Okay, can I just say that? Can I just say
that's
how
the point?
It was?
I bought my kid an $800 phone. He should be happy. Stop now.
Dad, I need your password again. I ran out of Smurf berries. Dad, I need your password again. I ran out of Pokeballs.
But that's
Dad,
right.
I need your
that's why you don't
again.
do it. That's why. Well, maybe I'm wrong. I just
get so bored when I'm spending my weekend at Mom's house and there's no games to play, and gosh, and you know, she just makes me do my homework and makes me do yard work
and
when
learn.
So do you think it'll be $10 a month? Because that seems to me.
I don't know. I was just using that as an example.
But that's my point. Is what could you charge that would make economic sense?
$10 a month.
There's always been a problem with the cost of apps and games in the App Store, is that they're always underpriced. These developers work really hard on their projects, and they have to charge 99 cents in order to get you to buy them, and not making enough money on it. So maybe this is a way for Apple to charge a lot, and then these developers to get more than just 99 cents one time for their apps. And there will be less of that in-app purchase type gaming going on, because the game developers that I've talked to in my entire time of covering Apple stuff is that going the in-app purchase route, a lot of game developers don't even like those types of games, but they know that that's the only way that they can make enough money to get to the next game or to, keep the lights on. So they do those in-app purchase games, but they would prefer a one-time buy, but they can't charge you even $10 for a game without an uproar from the buyers of these games, because we're used to 99-cent games. It was right out of the gate, it was a bad idea for games to be so cheap, and now there's no way out of it. Maybe this is a way out of it for game developers to be able to raise the price of their games or participate in Apple's subscription base so that they can just kind of get a little bit more for their game than they get now.
Well, I can see why it's good for developers in Apple. I don't see the value proposition to users at all.
But if you know that you're getting quality and that you're not getting tricked into the
why do you think
world
freemium
of in-app
works?
purchases,
People are
because
people don't want to pay up front, but they'll pay for ego or for instant gratification.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So if
you're asking me to pay up front, sight unseen, a monthly fee for I don't even know what the game is.
Well, you do it for Netflix though, Leo.
That's pretty different. I honestly don't think that
for some people it's not.
But is it for a kid?
You do. I pay Microsoft's Game Pass. It's well worth it. But those are A-level games that cost $60. AAA games. I look at the games on iPad and wonder what would I be willing to pay a monthly fee of any kind. Let alone
Fortnite has controller support now. Leo.
Fortnite's
you could
free.
be flossing.
Fortnite's
you could
free.
be flossing.
Yeah, you pay for flossing, but Fortnite's free.
I see it in the other direction. I don't see a whole lot of games on the iPad on iOS that are these sort of I'm going to enjoy for the next 2 weeks playing this game and getting really involved in this world. I'm seeing lots of little games that people just enjoy, just sort of like fast twitching to for a long time, or strategy games that it's not a big world that requires staffs of thousands of people in order to populate. It seems to me as though this is an okay value for simply saying, instead of you having to give someone $1 here, $2 there, $3 there, all you can eat for all these nice, smaller, more compact games that you will sort of use and discard over the next several days to a couple of weeks. It's an interesting proposition for Apple. And also remember that when any subscription service is essentially we're charging for electrons and air, and electrons and air are everywhere. My house is full of them. And to be able to charge for them instead of something you have to manufacture and source tiny obscure screws for, that's always an opportunity for Apple to get into in both feet.
What if the Cheddar story is a little bit misguided because they only talked to 5 developers? Apple talked to them last year because, of course, developers. What if it's not just? Wait a minute. Let me finish my thought.
Go ahead.
What if it's not just games? I mean, I would pay $10 a month for unlimited app access.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to quickly point out parenthetically that I'm always a little bit suspicious of one of these interesting news items about Apple that happens right before the earnings call. Yeah. It makes me wonder if maybe someone at Apple said, we need to distract some attention away from something that we know that's in the field.
Maybe
that's all I want to say. But I shouldn't have interrupted.
No, maybe that's it.
Yeah, and what you're saying is definitely possible that like the conversations could have been old or irrelevant.
They were, according to Cheddar, from summer of last year.
Mm-hmm.
So but maybe Apple was thinking about it and did, there's no reason that they might not have conversations on all kinds of things. So
this could be just a thing. Let's pitch this idea. Let's see what developers think. Nah, let's not, and move on.
Right.
It could be just like that.
Yeah.
If you're going to have a range of subscription services, if you're going to have Apple Music and Apple Television and Apple Magazines and in the future other services, having Apple Games is not the worst thing to include in your a la carte or in your bundle.
Is it impossible to do all apps?
No, Amazon had all apps, and there's I forget the name of that service on the Mac that has a ton of different apps. It's just the value proposition is really different. Somehow mentally, you make it like apps sort of Netflix is investigating game downloads as part of their Netflix subscription. It folds into that entertainment bucket, and people have proven that they'll pay for entertainment what they won't always pay for other stuff.
Actually, if you did camera apps, I would pay for that. I spent a lot of money on camera apps and filters and all that stuff. So maybe games is.
But subscriptions are you have two problems. One is you have subscription fatigue, or people are like every app is becoming subscription, and I just can't take it anymore. And you have subscription creep, where it's like every app is going to subscription, and I can't pay $80 a month for the apps that I used to buy once. And everyone's saying that subscriptions are the next big thing, which is what they said about in-app purchases before people got tired of those. And the real problem is that we haven't found a way to support developers to make the apps that we want. We all want these boutique craft, nice apps, but the only people who can afford to make apps really now are the ones that use data or hardware like Apple or Google to subsidize their creation. Yeah. And we haven't come to terms with being willing to pay for the apps that we want. So we're going to get less and less of them.
Apple does have some culpability for bringing the price of apps down. on iOS.
Only by making a store. It would have, if it wasn't Apple, it would have been somebody else. Any craft, when it hits mainstream, when you start, like, they were niche. There were so few apps. They were so expensive. It was Office. It was Photoshop. But as soon as access becomes ubiquitous, as soon as people realize, now I have access to 3,000 apps, I only used to have access to 3, and I bought one of them every year, the entire dynamic changes. It's like mass production of toys. You used to pay a little wooden carver to make your kid a toy, and now toys are being pumped out of every plastic factory. Mass production and lack of scarcity changes everything.
How much did we pay for Delicious Library, right? That was expensive.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But it was worth it.
Thousands of dollars for Final Cut, right? Like thousands of dollars every couple of years for Adobe Suites and for Final Cut. And I would only buy 1 or 2 apps a year, literally only buy 1 or 2 apps a year. And now you're like, oh, $1.
And on the plus side, now I'm paying for more software than ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lory.
I think the problem with this idea of it, there were so few of them, so we paid more for them, and now there's too many of them, so we pay less for them. That's detrimental to the quality program makers, the quality app makers. They have to reduce their price in order to compete with the 5,000 others that do the same thing for free. Because if I'm a consumer and I go in the App Store and I see this one that's $20. And to me, it looks the same as the 1,000 others that are 99 cents or free. I'm going to spend, I personally wouldn't, but a consumer might actually spend $1,000 trying to find the perfect 99-cent app instead of just spending $20 on that expensive one because they don't want to spend that money up front. So those good quality developers have lost out on this like mass production of apps that are cheaper.
Let me ask you all this.
I personally think it's a bad idea.
Do we notice a dearth of great apps on iOS?
I do.
I wouldn't
Absolutely.
say so.
There's some fantastic
it's harder.
developers.
Like you hear the developers talk about it. Like there was a whole.
I understand they're bitching, but they're not stopping.
Well, I mean, how do we like? There are developers, and there's like really well-known ones who have stopped making apps. Like they just don't make the apps they used to. They only make one app. They're hard to experiment. They just know or they go to work for a company doing contract work because Google can make as many camera apps as they want, but it's much harder for Sebastian DeWitt to make or Ben Rice to make Obscura or Halide.
I guess we'll never know if there's a great app that's not getting developed, but it feels like there's still very high quality. A great range of very high quality apps on iOS. People are not turning their back on the App Store, I don't think.
No, they're just trying to figure out how to like Overcast has tried 3 or 4 different business models by this point, trying to find one that's sustainable.